This moment in history is what we celebrate this weekend. You can hate him, you can love him, but you can't ignore him. We count time since his birth. 2,000 years ago, this man from Nazareth, this Galilean named Yeshua, or as we know him today, Jesus, forever changed the course of history. And today, according to Pew Research, nearly 1 out of 3 people on the planet identifies as a follower of this man, Jesus. The Old Testament is a record of history foretelling of a Messiah to come, and moms and dads for thousands of years told boys and girls of the day that God would become one of us and save us from eventual extinction. And the New Testament tells us of his birth, his life, his impact on the world, the moment he chose to lay down his life for everyone. And then the moment he slept in the tomb, and that momentous moment that changed everything. That question that echoes through time. Death, where is your victory? Death, where is your sting? How can we forget those words? Those words that Jesus says, I hold the keys of life and death. I am the resurrection and the life. I have come to you that you may have life and have it more abundantly. But in the midst of all this celebration, or at least the typical celebration that takes place this week, the most important question Christians and all people of faith should be asking this weekend is not who is Jesus, why is Jesus, what is Jesus, how is Jesus? But the question we should be asking is where is Jesus? And we're in good company with asking that last question. You see, as Mary was first at the tomb, the woman whom Jesus had prayed for 7 demons to leave, the one whom Jesus had not accused, but had shown her amazing redemption, the one who turned from her old life and began to follow Jesus. In John chapter 20, we read the account. On the first day of the week, here it is. It says, on the first day of the week, Mary, she goes to the tomb early, and it says while it's still dark. And she saw that the stone had been rolled away from the tomb. And then the next few verses describe how she runs to get Peter and the other disciples. And then they all run back, and they see this empty tomb. And they're confused, and they all run away except one. And that's in verse 11. And it says, but Mary stood outside by the tomb weeping. And as she wept, she stooped down and looked into the tomb. And as she saw 2 angels sitting, one at the head and one at the feet of where the body of Jesus had been laying. And then it says, they say to her, woman, why are you weeping? And then she says to them, because they've taken away my Lord, and I don't know where they've put him. And the next verse goes into this idea of, after she'd said this, she turns around outside of the tomb now, and she sees Jesus standing there. But she didn't know it was Jesus. Maybe she assumed he was somebody else. And Jesus says to her, woman, why are you weeping? Who are you looking for? And she thinks he's maybe the gardener. And she says to him, sir, if you've carried him away, please tell me where you've put him, where you've laid him, and I'll take him away. And then Jesus says to her, Mary. And then she turns to him and says, teacher. And then Jesus says, hey, don't cling to me yet. I haven't yet ascended to my Father, but go to my friends and say to them, I am ascending to my Father and your Father, my God and your God. And he's just identifying with us in this very moment. So we can identify with Mary saying, where is Jesus? And she's looking for him. So you fast forward a few verses, you go to Acts chapter 1 and verse 11. And here is where the disciples, they're all hearing the last words of Jesus as he's ascending up into heaven. And then the verse says something like this. Then these men in white, these angels, they start to say to the men of Galilee, why do you stand here looking up into the sky? This same Jesus, whom has been taken from you into heaven, He'll come back in the same way you've seen him go into heaven. So don't miss that, because it's so important, this description here. And I'll tell you why more in a minute. But in case we miss it, Jesus wanted to make it clear in John chapter 14 and verse 3. And he says, "If I go and prepare a place for you, I will come again and receive you to myself, that where I am, there you may be also." That's really the whole story summed up. He wants to be with us. So where is Jesus today? I mean today, like literally right now, this weekend. Now don't get me wrong, the other questions are extremely important. Who is Jesus? Well, he's God. He's one of these three beings we call God. And I don't think it's too much of a stretch to think of them as this team, this family, this name, Jehovah God, Jesus the Son, the Holy Spirit, these three distinct entities. Jesus, we're told, is the Creator. And we're told in John chapter 1 and verse 3, "By him all things were made, nothing was made without him." We're told he made the worlds, plural. Yes, we are not alone. And we're told of a council where the family of God decided they would lay down their own existence to save their creation. Their family, we as humans, this distinct species on this planet. And then Jesus became one of us. So how about why is Jesus? Well, the name Jesus, or Yeshua or Yehoshua in Hebrew, is because the theory of God was not enough to satisfy the soul. The idea of God is never enough. The why of Jesus is because he wanted to be with his friends. And he came to be one of us, born of a virgin named Mary, raised in a poor, humble home, because after all, wealth is fleeting. He was a tradesman, he was a carpenter. Why was Jesus? Because without him, the idea of God was still not tangible, not real. He had to become one of us, and now he is one of us in heaven as a down payment, a representative that more of us are soon to join him. He's a representative of this planet and no other planet. Think about that. That's our assurance, our guarantee that humans have a future. How about what is Jesus? Is he God? Is he man? Is he half? Is he half? Is he fully both? Well, it's fully complicated. How is Jesus? You know, we don't know everything, but in the sense of how is he today, he still weeps when we weep. He still rejoices when we rejoice. Jesus he's waiting. He's waiting to be with us. He's still the same yesterday, today, and forever, but the burden of his soul is to be with us. So Jesus as well, maybe you could say he's a little heartsick, to be with his friends, to be with us. But now to that pivotal question, the same one Mary was asking, where is Jesus? You know, Jesus is a risk taker. That night in the garden, Jesus was being bombarded with the guilt of the whole world. He had to come to this choice, this moment, where he had to realize, was he going to go through with this? You know, I think Christianity, we've downplayed this moment. This was a risk. Was he willing to sleep forever? We're told he could not see through the portals of the tomb. He had to come to this decision. Would he lay down his very existence so that you and I could be together in paradise without him? Think about that. He was willing to cease to exist, to become a distant memory so that you and I could live in peace. This wasn't a weekend retreat. This was life and death, and it was the very existence of God that was at stake. If you think about all the belief systems of the world, so many stories of humans having to appease the gods, yet in this story, this Christian story, God is the one to lay down his life to do the sacrificing to save his creation, his friends. That's you and me. And then we're told on the Sabbath, the seventh day of the week, the Jews rested. You know, this day 2,000 years ago, Jesus was sleeping in a tomb in peace. And this may be the greatest evidence of what happens to us when we die, because the Bible makes a clear case. We don't go straight to heaven. We don't go to hell. We sleep in peace. This is where we get the term on most of our tombstones, R.I.P., rest in peace. This concept of quickly going up or going down, that's a new belief that paganism brought into the church that finds no evidence in the Bible. And the resurrection on Sunday morning, this here was the most climactic event in history. It made clear that death, that was old news. That's been defeated. The second death, that is, which is the eternal death of the soul. This is the one we need to run from. This is the idea, this tragedy, that those who knew to do right didn't do it and they chose to live selfishly, and this was their fate. You know, this story of Jesus sleeping in peace, it's a lesson for us that though we may die that first death and sleep, we have this hope that the same one who was resurrected on that first day of the week, he can resurrect us if we go to sleep. He can recreate us from the very same dust like he created us in the beginning. You know, he says, I knew you before you were in your mother's womb. He's the creator and he's the resurrecting one. So why are we afraid all the time? You know, why don't we have that assurance that the one who's loved us, loved you so much to bring you into existence, is the same one that if you or I die, can bring us back into existence and live with us in paradise with those we love. He lived this righteous, unselfish life as our example. He laid down his life as an example that there is no greater love than to lay down your life, your goals, your dreams, your ambitions for your friends. And he slept in peace, trusting his own existence, his own being into the hands of God. And then the sun rises on that first day of the week. 2 angels land on the earth. They cause the earth to quake, and they cause the soldiers nearby to nearly go blind. And then that name above all names, Jesus, comes forth. But he waits. He waits until his friend Mary is clear where he is. And only after he's sure that she is clear did he go to the Father to make sure that the hope of humanity was secure. And I think today he's waiting on us again, because he wants us to know exactly where he is today. He's not in a tomb, he's not in Israel, he's not on a boat in Galilee. He's in heaven. He's in this temple, and he's working for us and in us to bring this war, this controversy, to an end. You may think, well, I guess, sure, but does the Bible have anything to say about that? It does. In Hebrews chapter 7 and 8, Scripture tells us, if you go to 7 verse 22, it says, Jesus has become this surety of a better covenant. You know, the old covenant was Israel saying, oh, the law? Wow, that sounds important. Yes, we will do this. We got this. And the new covenant is Jesus saying, I will do it. I will write my law in and on your heart. The old covenant is getting up every day, trying to fix yourself, looking in the mirror, saying, I can do this. I just need to do it better. And the new is, Lord, I got no answers for this. This addiction, this burden, this pain, this habit. Please help me. And then verse 25, it really gets a little deeper. It says, he's able to save us to the uttermost, to the maximum, to the ends of the earth. Those who come to God through him. Why? Because then it says, because he always makes intercession for them. You know, it's that feeling as you stand guilty, burdened, discouraged. You have to remember, Jesus is standing for me, defending me, pleading my case, taking my guilt, and taking the sentence that I deserve. Well, then it gets into Hebrews chapter 8, and this gets into the nitty-gritty of where is Jesus. And in Hebrews chapter 8, it's loaded. I'm just going to give you a high-level view, and then I want you to dig into it yourself. But here it describes it like this. Here's the main point. We have this high priest who sat down in the place of honor beside the throne of God in heaven. And there he's ministering in this tabernacle, this temple, this sanctuary, this true place of worship that God built, not by human hands. And then it goes on to describe, since every high priest, because it's talking about something we've given secrets to in the Old Testament, they're required to give these gifts and sacrifices. And it says, our high priest, he's got to make an offering too. And if he were on the earth, you know, he'd make it like the other priests, but they offer gifts required by the law. They serve in a system of worship that is, it's only a copy, a shadow of the real one in heaven. Then it says, when Moses was getting ready to build the tabernacle, God gave him this warning. Hey, be sure you make everything according to the pattern I have shown you here on the mountain. Then Hebrews goes on to say, but now Jesus, our high priest, he's been given this ministry that is far superior to the old priesthood, because he's the one that mediates on far better promises and this better covenant. You know, way back then, Moses was shown this vision of this massive temple in the celestial city, and he's told to build this small replica of it, this sanctuary, this tabernacle, that holds the keys to understanding all prophecy, all mystery, all the story of the gospel in this little illustration of a sanctuary that they moved through the desert and eventually built as Solomon's temple. And today we no longer need to look back to Mary and asking that question where Jesus was or is, because today we need to be asking in this moment, where is he today? And in Hebrews and in Revelation and countless other verses in Scripture, they make it clear, especially in the New Testament, he's in heaven, finishing the final work of restoring humanity, making us whole again, and accepting everyone's desire to be saved or to be selfish. And once he hears our decision, which we make daily, moment by moment, he'll one day soon return to take those who want to be with him before the earth and all of its ecosystems destroy themselves. So how much longer until he returns? Well, he told us no man knows the day or the hour, but we could know the signs of when it was close. We could look to nature and we'd see that nature would become unhinged. We could look for deception to run rampant. And then he describes how Christianity, well, it's going to lose its power. It's kind of going to go off the rails. And these would be signs of his soon return that we were to look for. But the biggest sign will be in his people, those who profess his name, that they would become full of his Spirit, so much so that everyone around them knows it. He says he'll return when there's this harvest, a ripe harvest of fruit. And that fruit is the fruit of the Spirit. A generation of persons so sold out, so convinced that Jesus is the only one who could take us through the storms of life. And we got to get to that point where we fully trust him. Because he's waiting, we're told, to give the command to these four angels, holding these four winds of trouble on the world, until he's fully confident that we are confident in him, that he'll never leave us or forsake us, that his people have given up on selfishness, and that his people realize they have no righteousness in and of themselves, and that his people realize they cannot save themselves. That's what he's waiting for. There's this quote, in the heavenly courts there will be no song sung to me that loved myself, washed myself, redeemed myself. But how many of us sing this song in the here and now, thinking we can save ourselves? You know, at this very moment, while the whole world sees a storm cloud brewing on the horizon, and make no mistake, Bible prophecy predicts that a storm, a time of trouble, will break on the world as an overwhelming surprise at the close of time, and that the final movements would be rapid ones. But Jesus says before all that happens, he needs you and I to know something very clear. He wants us to know him. Because if you go to Matthew chapter 7, and verses 21 to 23, it says something like this. It says, not everyone who says to me, Lord, Lord, shall enter the kingdom of heaven, but he who does the will of my Father in heaven. Then Jesus says, you know, many will say to me in that day, that's our day, the time when cases would be decided, many would say, Lord, Lord, have we not prophesied in your name, cast out demons in your name, done many wonders in your name? And then Jesus says, I'll declare to them, I never knew you. Depart from me, you who practice lawlessness or selfishness. And many are going to say, I was a Christian. I went to church. I celebrated Easter. I gave some money to the poor. And Jesus says this wild statement. I don't know you. And I never knew you. So why do you and I need to know him? And why does he need to know us? Because when the storms of life come, and darkness and deception are all around, and light appears to be gone, what do we do? And how do we know what is true? How do we know the path, the way in which we can find hope? Because if you close your eyes and you had to walk through a storm with noise and thunder and lightning all around, you have to know that still small voice, that subtle whisper of God's Spirit telling you, this is the way. You need to know that even if you can't see God in life, in moments in life, or even if you see people claiming to be God's people or His representatives, you need to know His voice from His Word saying, this is the way. So where is Jesus? He's preparing to take us home. And He wants everyone to be saved because He's prepared a place for us. Because we got to remember those words. He said, if I go and prepare a place for you, I will come again. And that's the hope of this weekend. That same Jesus that lived for you, died for you, and rose for you is coming again one day soon to finally be with you. I hope this can bring you encouragement in this very moment. God bless you.